Air travel has always been full of little rules, but in recent years, the list of what you can and can't bring through airport security has gotten longer, stranger, and at times, downright surprising. Every traveler knows the basics: no large bottles of liquids, no sharp objects, no explosives, obviously. But the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, has been quietly updating its banned items list in 2025, and some of the changes might catch you completely off guard. Imagine packing your bags, heading to the airport, and being stopped in line because of something you thought was completely harmless, something you never imagined would land on the banned list. That's happening right now, and if you're not aware, it could cost you your belongings, your time, or even your trip. Today, we're going to dive deep into the latest TSA bans, the reasons behind them, the strangest stories of confiscated items, and what it all means for you the next time you travel. Because one thing is certain: getting caught at the airport with a banned item is not how you want to start your journey. Let's start with the obvious. TSA rules exist to protect passengers. That much we all agree on. But the complexity lies in how threats evolve. Over the years, everything from liquid explosives to disguised weapons has pushed security officials to adapt and expand the list. For example, do you remember when they banned full-size liquids after the 2006 transatlantic liquid bomb plot? Overnight, water bottles went from an afterthought to a symbol of airport security. That one incident changed how the world flies forever. Now, we're seeing another wave of changes, and the items being targeted range from the logical to the bizarre. Some bans make perfect sense once you hear the reasoning. Others, well, they'll just leave you scratching your head. One of the biggest categories in 2025's updated ban list is certain types of smart devices. We're talking about lithium battery-powered gadgets that don't meet updated safety standards, power banks with exposed wiring, hoverboards, certain brands of e-cigarettes, all now explicitly banned from carry-on and in many cases from checked luggage too. Why? Fires. In the last few years, there have been dozens of reported incidents of these batteries overheating mid-flight, causing smoke in the cabin or triggering cargo alarms. Just one fire on a plane is enough to justify a strict crackdown. Imagine being the unlucky traveler whose cheap knockoff power bank sparks in the overhead bin. That's the kind of nightmare scenario TSA is trying to prevent. But technology isn't the only focus. Food items have quietly been added to the banned or restricted list, depending on how they're packed. Believe it or not, certain powders are now under tight scrutiny. Baby formula is fine if declared, but protein powders, powdered spices, and even ground coffee in large amounts can trigger red flags. TSA agents now routinely test powders for traces of explosives, and in some airports, large containers are banned outright unless sealed in original packaging. It's not that your cinnamon is dangerous, it's that finely ground powders can be used to conceal substances that are. Another surprising addition: alcohol of certain strengths. TSA has long banned carrying bottles of alcohol over 140 proof in both checked and carry-on luggage. But this year, enforcement has gotten stricter, and travelers report even duty-free bottles being confiscated if they don't meet labeling requirements. That homemade moonshine from your uncle's farm? Don't even think about packing it. It's not only flammable, it's an instant red flag. And speaking of alcohol, mini liquor bottles under 100 milliliters are still technically legal in carry-ons. But the TSA has been cracking down on passengers trying to sneak extra bottles through, especially those who plan to self-serve during flights. Federal regulations forbid consuming your own alcohol on board, and people breaking that rule are now facing hefty fines. Now let's move to the stranger side of banned items. Did you know that peanut butter was recently classified as a liquid? Yes, According to TSA guidelines, if you can spread it, pour it, or pump it, it counts as a liquid or gel. That means your jar of Jif or Nutella is subject to the same 3.4-ounce rule as shampoo. Countless travelers have had jars of peanut butter tossed out at security checkpoints because they didn't realize the rule applied. Similarly, cream cheese, hummus, and even frosting have been caught in this category. It may seem absurd, but in the eyes of airport security, it's all about consistency and potential misuse. Weapons disguised as everyday objects have also driven new bans. Items like credit card knives, tactical pens, and even self-defense keychains shaped like cat ears are being confiscated daily. Many passengers argue, but it's just for protection. The problem is, these objects can be turned into weapons, and in the tight quarters of an airplane, TSA isn't taking chances. Even novelty items like replica grenades, toy guns, or realistic-looking lighters are now under total prohibition. Countless travelers have learned the hard way that carrying a souvenir grenade-shaped paperweight or a realistic lighter can lead to lengthy delays, questioning, and missed flights. TSA officers don't have the luxury of assuming something is fake when it looks real. And here's one that might surprise pet owners. Certain types of pet food and chews are being stopped at checkpoints. Rawhide bones soaked in liquids or vacuum-sealed packs of wet pet food have triggered alarms in scanners. While dry kibble usually passes without issue, the TSA has flagged these items because the composition can sometimes mimic prohibited organic substances in X-ray images. For travelers relocating with pets or flying internationally, this has led to confusion and frustration. It's another reminder that if it's unusual, it's better to declare it before it's flagged. But beyond the lists and rules, let's talk about the experience. The stories coming out of airports show just how unprepared many travelers are. One woman recently had her expensive jar of organic almond butter tossed in the trash. A man had a brand new tool set confiscated because he forgot to check it. Entire boxes of Cuban cigars have been tossed because of both customs and TSA restrictions. And perhaps most shockingly, someone tried to carry through an entire samurai sword, insisting it was a family heirloom. Needless to say, it didn't make it past security. These examples may sound extreme, but they're real, and they highlight one truth. If there's even a question, TSA will err on the side of safety. So what's the takeaway for travelers? Awareness. The TSA doesn't ban items to inconvenience you, even though it can feel that way. Every addition to the list comes from real incidents, failed attempts, or intelligence suggesting potential misuse. The problem is, these rules often change quietly, without much public fanfare, leaving passengers blindsided. Your best defense is preparation, checking updated lists before you pack, asking questions if you're unsure, and when in doubt, leaving it behind. The few minutes you save by skipping research could cost you dearly at the checkpoint. But this conversation also raises a bigger issue about how we think of travel and security. On one hand, we all want safe skies, free from threats. On the other, nobody wants to feel like a criminal for packing hummus or having their grandmother's knitting needles confiscated. It's a delicate balance, and TSA agents themselves often bear the brunt of frustration from travelers who don't understand the rules. Next time you're in line, watching someone argue over their oversized shampoo bottle or their oversized jar of salsa, remember that these rules are designed to minimize risks in an environment where even a small oversight can have enormous consequences. And as security evolves, so too must we as travelers. Think of it less as losing convenience and more as adapting to a world where risks are always shifting. Yes, it means saying goodbye to certain comforts. Yes, it means double-checking your bags. And yes, sometimes it means throwing out perfectly good food. But the alternative, a lapse in security with hundreds of lives at stake, is far worse. So before your next trip, take a moment to look up what's newly banned. Rethink your packing habits, simplify where you can, and travel with the awareness that safety is a shared responsibility. Because while it's frustrating to part ways with a jar of peanut butter or a power bank, it's nothing compared to being the person who unknowingly puts an entire plane at risk. Don't get caught at the airport. Stay informed, stay prepared, and fly safe. One of the most fascinating parts of TSA's evolving banned list is how it intersects with culture and everyday life. Think about it. What's considered completely harmless in one country might be a red flag in another. For example, travelers from Asia have often been surprised to learn that items like dried meats, herbal medicines, or even certain types of tea are not only questioned, but sometimes outright banned when entering the US. The TSA doesn't just screen for security threats, they also enforce agricultural restrictions and federal import laws. That means your mother's homemade spice blend, which has traveled across generations, might end up in the trash bin because it resembles restricted organic matter. There's a sense of loss there, not just for the object itself, but for the connection to home it represents. Stories like these remind us that what's being filtered through security isn't just luggage, it's culture, identity, and personal history. Take another example, musical instruments. Many musicians travel with guitars, violins, or flutes, and while instruments themselves aren't banned, accessories like bow rosin, certain oils, or even strings with sharp ends can trigger alerts. There was a case of a violinist who nearly missed a performance because TSA agents debated whether her rosin counted as a flammable substance. These gray areas make the rules feel unpredictable, and for professionals whose livelihoods depend on carrying tools of their trade, it can be especially stressful. Then we have the rise of dual-use items, things that are perfectly innocent in everyday life but could be dangerous in the wrong context. Tools are the most obvious example: screwdrivers, wrenches, scissors. These aren't weapons in your garage, but on an airplane at 30,000 feet, they represent risk. TSA rules are designed around the what if. What if someone misused this object mid-flight? That's why even knitting needles have caused debates. Knitting needles. For some, that feels excessive. For others, it makes sense. Anything long and pointed in a pressurized cabin could become a problem. And let's not forget the bizarre smuggling attempts that keep security officers on high alert. Over the years, people have tried to sneak prohibited items in hollowed-out books, disguised soda cans, even prosthetic limbs. There are reports of knives hidden inside laptops, drugs sealed into peanut butter jars, and live animals. Yes, live animals being carried through in clothing or containers. TSA agents have discovered snakes in pillowcases, parrots tucked under hats, and once even a live cat inside a suitcase, detected only because of the X-ray machine. These stories sound absurd, but they underscore why the agency keeps expanding its list. Human creativity in smuggling knows no bounds. Travelers themselves often underestimate how seriously security takes intent versus appearance. A small pocket knife you forgot was clipped to your backpack might be innocent to you, but from a TSA officer's perspective, it's a potential weapon. The same goes for things like toy replicas. Parents traveling with children have seen toy guns, swords, or even Lego weapons confiscated, because in a split-second scenario, TSA can't assume it's fake. If it looks real, it gets treated as real. This is why communication is so critical. Declaring questionable items, even if you think they're fine, gives you the best chance of keeping them, or at least avoiding suspicion. There's also the frustration factor. So many passengers argue their case at checkpoints, convinced the rules don't make sense. And to be fair, some of them don't. Why is peanut butter a liquid but solid cheese is fine? Why can you bring a pie through security but not a jar of jam? These inconsistencies make people roll their eyes. Yet the underlying logic is usually tied to how scanners detect materials, how substances can be concealed, or how they might be weaponized. It's not always about how we see the object, it's about how machines and risk assessments see it. But here's where things get interesting. The TSA isn't just reactive anymore, it's proactive. Artificial intelligence is being integrated into scanning technology, allowing machines to flag suspicious shapes, densities, or chemical signatures more accurately than humans alone. This means that even everyday items could be flagged in new ways if AI interprets them as a risk. Imagine your jar of protein powder being analyzed not just for weight, but for molecular composition. The future of travel security might not involve longer lists of banned items, but smarter machines that can interpret what's in your bag without opening it. Still, until those systems are perfected, bans remain the simplest, broadest way to reduce risk. For travelers, the emotional toll is real. Losing expensive items to confiscation stings, especially when it's something sentimental or irreplaceable. One passenger recalled bursting into tears after having her grandmother's handmade jam thrown out because it was in liquid form. Another spoke of losing a set of rare spices bought overseas, confiscated for looking suspicious on an X-ray. The sense of violation isn't just about money, it's about memories, meaning, and intent. To the traveler, these items are harmless. To TSA, they're unknowns. That clash creates a human story in every confiscation bin. And what about the impact on airports themselves? Believe it or not, tons of confiscated items are collected daily. Some get destroyed, others are donated, and some even end up sold at government surplus auctions. Yes, you can literally buy TSA confiscated goods in bulk, everything from pocket knives to sunglasses, unopened bottles of perfume, even musical instruments. It's an odd afterlife for items travelers never meant to part with, and it highlights how much gets left behind in the name of safety. At the heart of it all, though, is a paradox. The more secure we try to make flying, the more complicated travel becomes. Every new ban adds another layer of stress, another thing to remember, another chance to make a mistake. For frequent flyers, it's second nature to pack light, avoid risky items, and breeze through checkpoints. But for families, occasional travelers, or international visitors unfamiliar with TSA rules, the system feels like a minefield. That's why awareness matters more than ever, because avoiding the embarrassment of being stopped, questioned, or delayed isn't just about comfort. It's about respecting the invisible web of safety that keeps air travel running. So the next time you pack your bag, think carefully. That jar of peanut butter, leave it at home. That oversized power bank, double check its rating. That quirky souvenir shaped like a weapon, don't risk it. Air travel today demands mindfulness, and the TSA's new bans are a reminder that what seems small to us can mean everything in the context of shared safety. And ultimately, isn't a smooth, stress-free trip worth a little extra preparation?